Welcome to the Gospel According to podcast, the first and only podcast looking at the intersection of pop culture and the Christian faith. I'm your host, Dave Hallahan, joined as always by my co-host, and you may know him as the guy who can shell out the justice. It's Dan Ulrich.
Yeah, some people call me cool but rude, but you should know I'm really a party dude. Thanks, Dave.
Glad to be back with you, Dan. And we're not alone. We have a very special guest here to talk with us about the gospel according to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And you may know him as not those Huckabees. It's Tyler Huckabee.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me
Tyler.
on.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Oh, this is fun. Not those Huckabees. There was a time, like, I used to have to spell the last name, you know what I like when, like, and people like I had to go into the bank or whatever, or restaurants put in the name. You don't have to do that anymore, but now I also feel like I have to be like, it's the same as those Huckabees, but it's not like, but I'm not with them, but it's a different thing.
For spelling purposes. Well, I have a couple famous Ulrichs. There's Lars Ulrich, drummer of Metallica, Skeet Ulrich, 2000s star heartthrob.
Mostly good Ulrichs, I feel like pretty positive association.
A Knight's Tale.
The whole Napster thing with, Lars Ulrich.
I guess that's true.
Suck it up, man. Whatever, but not a lot of Hallahans, Dave.
It's true. I have this thing that I do. I don't, especially in movie theaters, I'll do it at home if I have the time or the patience, really. But when I watch a movie, I'll watch the closing credits all the way through to see if I can find a Hallahan. I have yet to find a Hallahan. So if you're a Hallahan who has ever worked on a movie, let me know. I'll watch your movie and I'll watch the credits and it'll be a good time. But
not even like the Marvel movies. There's like 10,000 people that work on those.
I know. But I'm telling you, I'm looking and I can't find it. So if you
Dave
find
Hallahan, the most famous Hallahan that exists.
Yeah. I mean, I co-started the first and only podcast looking at the intersection of pop culture and Christianity. So it's going to be hard to top that. Yes.
That's news to me. I had no idea. I've been on, this has been part of my beat for a little while, but to come on the premiere Christian faith and pop culture podcast is a real treat for me. This feels like a real career highlight.
Tyler, if anybody else tells you that they have that corner of the market, they're lying.
Heard. I got you. I'll let them know. I'll put the word out there.
Appreciate it.
We have a peek behind the curtain. We have had people actually reach out to us on Instagram, and they're like, "I don't think you can say that. I don't think you're like." They're like, "Have you heard of Relevant Podcast?" I'm like, "No, actually, I haven't. I've never heard of it. Not sure what you're talking about. Sure, they're doing something completely different." But
there's been Christian podcasts and there've been pop culture podcasts, but really none that
surely none that have done it
together.
I am not professionally associated with Relevant Magazine anymore, but I feel pretty confident in saying, unless there's been a major change in how they run things over there, that they will not be discussing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in any capacity anytime soon. Certainly not in the context of the gospel. So I think you're at the very least, you're on very safe ground in this department. You have the market cornered on this particular jurisdiction of pop culture.
Great. And that's why we have you here, because you're not afraid to talk about the hard topics like the gospel and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But
cancel me all you want to. Cancel. Bring it on.
TBN is not touching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Let the woke moralists try.
But as there's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie coming out, and so we thought it would be the time to address the gospel according to these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And as we thought about a guest, we wanted somebody who maybe has dabbled a little bit in pop culture here and there, but also who, when interacting with pop culture, almost maybe has to look at it from a gospel lens because they weren't allowed to watch things that weren't Christian when they were younger. And I feel like, Tyler, that you might fall into that. What were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the banned list in the Huckabee household growing up?
So I think there's two answers to that. I think it's yes and no, because I think they were technically, when I was a kid, verboten. I remember because I was born in '84, so I was the right age for the Ninja Turtles. Like that
Right.
was very
Yeah,
much
yeah.
that was what everybody was talking about, the Ninja Turtles. You couldn't get away from Turtle Mania when I was a kid, and I would say, with all due respect to Mike and Nancy Huckabee, my parents, who I would imagine will be listening to this, there were sometimes
So
I was a little
Mike
yeah.
Huckabee is your dad.
Mike Huckabee is my dad, but he's not that Mike Huckabee, which makes it doubly confusing. But there was, I would say I was a little confused about what was and was not allowed, and based on what the standards were, because there were a lot of superhero comics in my home, which, if you follow my work, that's a big part of what I continue to cover and talk about is superhero comics. Um, and that was fine. I had those toys and had the comics and watched the cartoons and all of that. But for some reason, Ninja Turtles were kind of like, that's a little too weird. Maybe that they go too far in the other direction. So I wasn't supposed to have any of those, but I kind of just did. Like my friends would give me the toys, or they'd be, the movies would be playing in my friends' homes, and I'd watch them over there, and I felt kind of guilty about it. So I did consume a lot of Ninja Turtle culture, but it was contraband. It wasn't technically permitted in the house. And I think finally my parents just kind of decided to let that one slide, pick your battles, and that one. And I really liked them a lot. So we had the toys, and we had the old side scroller arcade game. Was probably my first real brush with them, because we had that and the Pizza Hut in the little Nebraska town I grew up in. And I've dumped a lot of quarters into that thing for like 60 seconds of playtime. Like I did not, I was not very good at it. But so yes, it was banned, but I just didn't care, I guess.
It seems like it was more don't ask, don't tell kind of policy.
I think that was probably a fair way to put it.
You were proverbially in the sewer of
there you go. You got it.
Of your fandom of
you got it. Yes.
And your sister Sarah, was she allowed to?
Yeah, but she would never. She was the good kid, and I was kind of the bad boy of the Huckabee.
Dan, you've shared some of your Ninja Turtle stories here on the podcast before. You were a big fan. They played a big part in your upbringing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Born in '85, so a year after Tyler. Same thing. They were kind of geared towards me with the '87 show, and then the movies coming out and things like that. I've shared on the podcast before. In preschool, I had these little clips that went over my shoelaces, because we didn't have like Velcro shoes, so you just have like regular shoelaces that I would clip these things over, because I did not know how to tie my shoes. And that was my mom's way of keeping my shoes tied all year, all day. And so I had Michelangelo ones. So when where I went to preschool, I got to be Michelangelo when we were role playing Ninja Turtles, because I had the shoelace clips that were Michelangelo. But then come Halloween, all out of Michelangelo costume, so I had to be Leonardo for the preschool Halloween parade, and still hurts a little bit till today.
Being Leo is sort of the bitterest pill to swallow of a Ninja Turtle. I'm nothing against the Leo heads, but it's like no one's ever clamoring for the blue mask when you get ready.
He's being the kind of goody good,
the goody two, yeah.
And as we were planning this, I don't think I've thought of this before earlier today, but in my family, everybody in my family has a color. So I have 4 daughters, and my oldest daughter kind of started to assign colors. We would have the colored plates, and it was like, I get the blue plate, I get the pink plate, and things like that. And as I was thinking about it this morning, my 4 daughters' colors are red, orange, purple, and blue. And so I was like, is this a subliminal thing that I've carried with me these last
the personalities 30 match years? Up? Do they?
A little bit, yeah. Like my youngest is orange, is her color, and she's definitely like the goofball because she's the youngest of them. My oldest is purple, which she's very smart, but she has some of the Leo leader tendencies that I guess Don has as well. And my second born, second borns, Dave. Like she's red and she is
Yep.
has a lot of that in her. So it does it's eerily kind of, as I'm thinking of this, my daughters as the Ninja Turtles. Makes a
That's
lot of
funny.
sense.
I'm glad I'm glad we could have this breakthrough, Dan.
I know. This is like therapy for me. I'm like, all the pieces are
your
starting
family
to
a little
form
bit.
in my head as like coming to this realization, like at the end of the movie when you like the Sixth Sense, they show all the clips that happened earlier in the movie that you missed out on. I'm like, what?
We'll get our producer to take your at-home footage and splice it in here. A dream
like
sequence.
handing my daughter like little nunchucks and like a
cigarettes
sword
playing in the background as you get in the...
Yeah. I my brothers were my older two brothers were Ninja Turtles for Halloween, and our neighbor across the street, she was very crafty, and she homemade their costumes, and they were really sweet. I especially remember the heads, which were like paper mache, and,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It was pretty awesome. I'll have to scrounge up a picture for our Instagram followers so that they can see. But shout out to Miss Heidi for the excellent work there. So we already threw some shade at Leonardo, but who is your favorite Ninja Turtle? I feel like there's one right answer, but we'll see.
Oh wow,
we'll see. Tyler, we'll start with you. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Well, it's changed a little bit. When I was a kid, I really did. I was drawn to like leaders in a lot of the group books that I liked Cyclops. I liked Captain America. I just kind of liked the guy who was up front. So I liked that about Leonardo, but other than that, he's like a pretty basic. He's just none of their personalities are like I wouldn't. This is not in any way, shape, or form Shakespeare. Like Leo leader, Raphael rebel. They're not very nuanced, but leader. But Leo's particularly just kind of a hard one to crack. And as you get older, and I think this is probably a lot of people's trajectory, Raphael became at least the most compelling of the four for like, and I think that's pretty common because watching him buck the trend, and I think a lot of people are able to probably identify with how hard it is to embrace acceptance, which is a focal point of a lot of the movies and TV shows and the video games and the comic books that have come out since then. So when I read them, I'm most interested to see what happens with Raphael. But there's an interesting story to be told with any of them, I think, done right.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? You had the Michelangelo shoe clips. He helped you keep your shoes on. Is he your favorite, or are you going somewhere else?
I mean, growing up, obviously, yes, he was the fun one. The pizza didn't take things too seriously. Was always good for the punchline, the joke of it all. And kind of as Tyler was saying, in some of it's been fleshed out to varying degrees and the different properties of it. But a lot of times there is that kind of archetype that it's like done better or worse. But, Donatello is the nerd, the smart nerd. We have, the goody two shoes, Leonardo doing the right thing, being the leader. Raphael's the rebel, but then has that deeper storytelling. And then Michelangelo is, I think I still resonate with him as the peacekeeper kind of part of the group of trying to bring each other together during the hard times and the good times, the glue that's holding that together. So yeah, I'll still go Mikey.
Yeah. When I said there's only one right answer, I was thinking there's one or two, and I do think Michelangelo and Raphael are the two most compelling because Raphael does have that. You talked about it already, Tyler, but there are compelling stories to be told there, and then Michelangelo is the fun one, and I do think Leonardo and Donatello, for the most part, are, especially growing up, like they're the ones you want to avoid because they are the more boring, kind of straight-laced.
They're more
characters.
Adult teenager mutant turtles, right?
Yeah, they barely work as teens. Although I think the problem is with nerd isn't really a person now. Like, he's smart, he's the
Yeah.
tech guy.
Yeah.
That's something you do, but it doesn't really give you a lot to like. Well, what is he like? Like, what is his? What are Don's? What interests him? What's he passionate about? What's he afraid of? Obviously that story can be told, but it's not part of the archetype, and it really isn't an archetype. So he's, other than that, he's got a stick. He has the only really non-lethal weapon of the bunch, which could maybe tell you something about him.
And it's the more defensive of the four weapons as well, which can add to his personality if the writer brings it in that way.
Sure. And people have done that. I think there's been attempts to try to do that in different ways in the dozens, maybe hundreds of different media interpretations of these characters.
Yeah. I think those two, Michelangelo and Raphael, are the two that I at times have associated with. I think I had my rebellious phase in my Christian high school growing up and felt a little bit like Raphael. But like Dan was saying, with being kind of a peacekeeper in I find myself playing that role in a lot of relationships or social settings where I'm always trying to break any tension with a joke and deflect things that I think might be getting to like a tensious point by saying something silly or whatever, making a fool of myself. So I can definitely relate to the two of them. As you said, Tyler, there have been a lot of different iterations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Do you find yourself drawn to one in particular as being your favorite, the one that you've enjoyed the most?
I have not read all of them. I'm not like super well versed in any of these. I think that there is the original. I have read the original comic series, which I quite like. Two guys by the name of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, I believe, are their names, and they kind of came up with it as like a jokey riff on superheroes at the time, and it was intended to sort of be a parody of what at the time like what Frank Miller was doing in his Daredevil stories, like grim, gritty, more mature, kind of excessively violent or adult in ways that superhero comics hadn't been. And they're like, well, what if we just took everything that was working in superhero comics right now, mutants for the X-Men, teenagers for the Teen Titans, and ninjas from Daredevil, and put them into one hyper successful creature, and they came out with the Turtles, and obviously it ended up working better, I think, than they could have possibly anticipated that it would. But those early stories are just kind of fun in the sense they're kind of subversive, and they're very deliberately playing with working within the larger context of what was happening in comic book culture at that time. So reading them from that context is a lot of fun. But then as soon as the toy companies came knocking at their door, they were like, sure, we'll take $1 million. Here you go. Have fun with them. It was they didn't feel a lot of deep personal attachment to these characters. They were more than happy to take the check. And I'd say God bless them for it. Then you get into where I think we kind of found these characters, which was in the animated, the 90s animated TV show, which is just fun kid stuff. And I obviously watched that and I enjoyed it. I don't feel a lot of personal attachment to it now. I have dipped into here and there some of the later comic book stories, and some of them are really interesting, and they really do try to do more mature, catching up with them down the road, kind of old, like Senior Mutant Ninja Turtles when they're a little more
middle-aged Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it doesn't work quite as well, but sometimes they'll do a sort of where one or three of them have died, and so there's only one turtle left to avenge the rest of them against Shredder.
Was that the Last Ronin or
the Last Ronin? Okay. Yeah, which is it's a good story. It's well written. The art is really, really beautiful, and it's always impressive to see how different creative teams can take a story that seems very dumb and silly on its face and try to find something poignant and meaningful in it, which we're hoping this new movie from Seth Rogen will do as well, I think. And I would say it looks pretty promising from the outset.
Yeah.
But it'll be fun. So I would say really, because I do love comics as a medium, that's where I found probably where I feel the most attachment to these characters now as a grown up.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
I haven't
looms largest, if any.
Well, I mean, besides the live action and the 90s comic
Kid show,
and lots of action figures, and consuming pizza over the last 37 years.
Does eating pizza count? I think that's
but yeah, I mean, that was it was more of a grown-up thing. As I've seen some of the kind of animation and the newer stuff, my girls actually watched some of it over a friend's house, and I'm like, oh well, I'd watch this with you,
Right, yeah.
But yeah, most of it that I consumed was that the live action stuff, which I think the the puppetry and stuff still holds up very well on that, Jim Henson and things like that. But yeah, that's my
Yeah.
childhood is my experience with that.
Yeah. I think the Secret of the Ooze looms largest in my mind with with Bebop and Rocksteady and with Vanilla Ice and the
All
Ninja
time
Rap.
names right there. Let's just put that out. All time names.
I do love Bebop and
Bebop
Rocksteady.
and Rocksteady.
Yeah. They're goated, I think. But yeah, and then the Ninja Rap and all that. I think that looms largest in my mind. I'm excited about the new Seth Rogen one that's coming out. I think it has I have not engaged with the comics, so with like the cartoon series that the various cartoon series that have come out, the various movies that have come out, I don't know that there's exactly a high bar to like be the best one.
I don't think so. I mean, there's the movies are. I think that first movie and Secret of the Ooze are pretty good.
Yeah,
for what they were at the
right.
time. But it's also such a product of the late 80s and early 90s where like being a teenager was the coolest thing anybody could possibly be. And it was
Yes.
basically just meant you like were an adult but way cooler. Like you had all the responsibilities of an adult, but none of the like crushing responsibilities, and you were just awesome, which is why kids who were my age, who were like 8 years old and this was happening, were like super pumped about all of this. And it wasn't until, and I think we kind of like maybe in the late 90s or early odds kind of shook ourselves off and realized, oh no, being a teenager mostly sucks, and you are so confused and scared of everything, and you just want to die every day because you are so tired. And I think that feels like, and that's something I heard Seth Rogen talk about on a podcast he was on discussing this movie, is they really wanted to foreground the teenage part of this, make that the primary lens that you view these characters through instead of the mutant or the ninja part, like you saw with the Michael Bay movies, which are pretty bad, and make sure that, this is a teen coming of age story, which I think watching that trailer, it's almost a jump scare when they start talking and their like voices are cracking and they actually sound like kids,
right?
They sound like you sounded when you were a teenager, which seems sort of obvious in retrospect, but I don't know that that story has really been told in the way that it's being told here, from what we can tell.
That's the point you bring up, Tyler, is like was jarring for me too. Like growing up as a preteen and watching all of these shows on television, like that are like you're saying, glorifying, teenage and high schoolness. And then I specifically remember times in my life where I was like, this isn't like the getting to high school and you're like, how did Screech get shoved in these lockers? My locker is so small. Like this is not like the, pop culture way of saying that, we're all going to hang out at a diner and we're going to go to the mall and, and we're going to have these hijinks and everything's going to be great and these friendships and stuff like that. I'm like, I was sold this bill that is not what high school is.
I know zero karate.
Yeah. There are no bad guys that I get to fight or be that. Yeah. I can't order pizza on my own. Like I can't do that. Yeah. There's
as long as mom leaves a 20 on the fridge,
right.
I need everything.
Right. There's no the Max to go to or Chubby's to hang out at after school. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm excited. And I think even the animation style, like for this new one, is reminiscent of the like Into the Spider-Verse movies that have been great, and so I'm hoping it can capture some of that. And I do think Seth Rogen is a good person to give a shot at it. That I don't think it's just like a money grab to like, oh, let's make it look like Into the Spider-Verse and we'll make some money. Like I think he'll actually try to tell a good story, and so I'm excited for that. So. Across all of these stories, there are a lot of through lines through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But the big question, the reason why we're paying you the big bucks for this appearance, Tyler, is the people want to know, what is the gospel according to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Mm-hmm. I think when you guys reached out to me about doing this podcast, as somebody who spent a big part of his professional life finding, the gospel according to, or where is God in X pop culture thing, which I've done a lot of, this could be the toughest one that I've had to.
I think I think your immediate response was like, this will be the toughest needle I've had to thread.
Yeah, this could be if I'm Michelangelo, this could be this could really be my Sistine Chapel.
Okay.
I'm trying, so I don't want to botch this, and what I really don't want to do is do the thing where some places have done, and I'm sure I've done in the past too, where it's just too much of a stretch to be worth it. But as I was thinking about this yesterday, while I was cleaning the house and trying to, I do think that there is something that is always very compelling to me, and that I find very compelling, especially in some of those series that I was mentioning earlier that served as inspiration for the Ninja Turtles, like the X-Men, the Titans, even the Daredevil comics to an extent, is this idea of found family. Which I know is a real struggle for people, and learning to live within community, especially when you're thrown together and you don't really have a choice. This has to be your team. This is something you also have seen explored, I think, very, very well in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is something that is clearly very important to him as a filmmaker and as a storyteller. Is what do you do with people who don't get along, who aren't even necessarily all that likable, but have to learn to love each other, and frequently do learn to love each other, not necessarily in spite of their warts and flaws, but because of them. And I think that's what the Ninja Turtles movies, at their best, really can be about. Is you have these four outcasts who are leading these very unique experiences, obviously. And yeah, they're ninjas, and yeah, they're mutants, and yeah, they're teenagers, but mostly they just don't have anybody else. Like, who else could they even hang around?
Mm-hmm.
And so having somebody, especially like an older person, who can give them the discipline and the structure that you need to forge those kinds of bonds, especially when you're in adolescence, I think is a really powerful framework. And I think part of the reason why this idea has stuck even beyond the toys and the franchises and the multiple iterations of them is that is an extremely relatable thing when you're a teenager. Is you just feel so alone, and you feel like nobody else understands you until you meet those couple people who most people do find at some point in their high school experience, and you're like, we click. You do get me. I do like being around you. And those people, they stick with you forever, and they turn you into the kind of person that you're going to be. So I think that is something that is very core to the idea of the gospel. I think it's something that's very core to the idea of the church, is that we have to learn to get along with each other despite how little we sometimes like each other or feel very likable ourselves. And that the bond that we have, the structure that we've been given as a church body, can be extremely useful in doing that if we let it. We're not always good at doing that, but if we let it, it really can't be. So that's where I would say. Yeah. If I find one Ninja Turtles, that's where I would go with it.
Yeah. I think at its best, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and any kind of team up thing, we see the need for each person's skill set.
Sure.
You mentioned Guardians, like in different fight scenes or their dynamics, you need this person, this, and I think at its best, there's stories that are told where it's okay. We need Donatello's tech. We need, Leo to be sacrificial or to take that leadership. We need the, boldness and courage of Raphael. We need, Michelangelo. So like we need each other, and the differences that sometimes can separate us, like you were saying, sometimes put us at odds where you don't necessarily always like each other, but for a common purpose, for a common goal, which is what the church is, which is what the community of believers, the way of Jesus Christ is, a common goal of bringing the good news to the world, that we would come together, put our differences aside, but also utilize those differences for this common goal, for the common good.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because we're all like prone to seek homogeneity. Like we want to be around people who are like us, and we feel comfortable there. but we have stories like fictional stories like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Guardians that show us that there's power in difference. But even, with Jesus and his choosing of his disciples, like choosing people from vastly different backgrounds, and um, I'm I can only imagine the frustrations that they had with one another and the fights that they got into that aren't recorded for us. But Jesus specifically chose people who looked different and acted different and thought different and had different ideals to come together to change the world. And that is what the church is supposed to continue to be, rather than us retreating to our silos of people who agree with us. That we're supposed to be communities of people who disagree, but stick together because of it, and stick around one another long enough to see the strength in those differences. So you did it, Tyler. Good job. I think
Well,
home run.
well, I think it's important because I do think this is something that we know in our heads, but we do a very bad job of
Yes.
actualizing. Like if it was up to Raphael, he would not be with the team. Like he would have
Right.
left, and that's frequently a plot point in these movies is that he's like, I'm done with you guys. I'm going to go it on alone,
Mhm.
and then him learning that he does need that team, and he deep down wants that team too.
Right.
And I think that we all feel. And I think if it was up to Leo, he would have a team full of Leos. He would want people who are just like follow. We follow the straight and narrow. We only do the
Rational
the right
thinkers,
thing or
not
the wrong
driven.
thing. We do the right thing. Here's what the right thing is. And I think that's what so many of us want out of our not out of our church experience. And a lot of churches are honestly pretty good at creating those kinds of
Mm.
communities where
Yeah.
everybody is more or less the same. You might come in one way, but the assumption is that hopefully you'll come out, looking more or less the same on the other side. And I think the most successful churches that I personally have been a part of in my life are the ones that really allow these diverse opinions, identities to flourish
Yeah.
and to make each other stronger. And that's tougher for sure. It's a
Mhm.
lot more complicated, and it's a lot harder and a lot riskier. But what comes out the other end is so much more rewarding and so much stronger, and makes everybody so much better than they would be otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all need a splinter who can live in that
Yeah, we do need a
tension
splinter.
with us. All
Yeah,
right. You guys ready for a couple games?
Yeah, let's do it.
can't
All
wait.
right.
Cowabunga.
All right. We're
Pizza
going
time.
to. It's pizza time. It's also time for the Bible breakdown.
And here comes the breakdown.
All right, for the Bible breakdown, we have the normal cast of characters, certainly the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themselves, but I thought we could throw some of the other frequent side characters in as well. Which Bible character? I'm going to give you one of the characters from TMNT, and I want a Bible character that most closely aligns with them. Dan and Tyler, you guys can kind of, and myself, we'll all kind of, we'll try to co-op this. All right.
Gotcha.
So let's start with Leonardo. Which Bible character do you think matches up with Leo?
My first thought is Moses.
Okay.
Like a leader who's very, very principled, really has his own ideas about the ways that things should be run, and isn't afraid to sort of buck Master Splinter when it comes down to it. But ultimately, really, like, people are drawn to him. People want to follow him. Doesn't find it too complicated it just has that presence of can command a group of people. People look, there's a decision made, people just kind of like look that direction. So that'd be where I'd go.
I like Moses.
Yeah, I like
I like
that.
Moses better than my answer.
What was your answer?
I had King David, and I think you have to like ignore some parts of King David for it to fit. But
Sure.
but when I think of Leonardo, I think of like humility and kind of quiet reflection, kind of
Mhm.
a humble resolution, And I think we see those. Certainly, we see the opposite of those in David, but we also Leonardo occasionally will buck that as well. But I think we have like the quiet reflection. We know that David was someone who withdrew. We have his Psalms that he wrote. And then he was someone who was resolved to do the right thing, especially early on, where he had opportunities to kill Saul, but he was like, "That's not the right thing to do, so I'm not going to do it." In early battles, as king, he would first retreat and pray to God, like, "Is this something that you want me to do?" So King David is who I
He
thought
knew
of
how to
initially.
use a sword, you know.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
true.
got
Yeah,
on
I
a
got.
sword.
Yeah, I got to give you that.
He's
Gotta
got
give
the
you that.
sword. Yeah,
Which is the thing, with all of these Ninja Turtles shows and things where he's swinging swords left and right, but no one ever gets cut, seemingly.
Flat into the blade. Just
Right?
yeah,
pop. You
Just
just like
whack
it's just
him.
like
yeah, yeah.
slap against the.
Hit him with the butt of it, to knock him out.
Yes. He's a non-violent swordsman, non-lethal. All right, Dan, did you have anybody for Leonardo, or you're gonna defer to us here?
I mean, those were good. Mine only was like John the Beloved, that his steadfastness, being the only the one at the crucifixion and kind of like seemingly was there all the time. But your guys' ones was better, I guess.
All right, points for us, I guess. How about with Raph? Who do you got for Raph, Dan? We'll start with you.
I had two, like one maybe Simeon the Zealot, was always, was the kind of fight first, ask questions later. Or I see, we see a lot of Peter, where it was the aggressive nature, wanting to go first, and then figuring out, oh shoot, I do need other people, like Tyler was saying. It was like, okay, he's going to be the first one to get out of the boat, but then there's going to be the flaws that happen, and might betray somebody here and there. His emotions get the best of him and cut somebody's ear off, but then ultimately comes around and seeks to work together.
Yeah, I had Peter for Raph as well. Angsty and earnest, but also has like a perseverance. He's going to stick it out. How about you, Tyler?
Interesting. Peter's on my list, but he was not here.
Okay,
I had him for a different character. We'll get to. But I said Samson. Samson,
Okay.
hothead, tends to trust in his strength. Goes it alone. Doesn't need anybody else's rules. Doesn't like anyone else telling him what to do. Think first, apologize later. Makes a lot of mistakes along the way. Just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the groups.
I like
what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Nice. And he's kind of got a thing Ref does with April, where he's especially drawn to her.
Tends to think with his hormones sometimes. That works too. Yeah.
That's
he's
good.
a teenager. He's a teenager.
They all, yeah. Well, that's good. I like it. All right, so we got Peter or Samson for Raphael. We might have to. We'll see where Peter lines up for you later if we want to switch that over. Donatello, who do we have for Donnie here? I haven't started yet. I went with, this one was probably the hardest for me, but I went with John the Baptist because I think he's underappreciated. He's happy to work behind the scenes. He doesn't need to be the main guy. He doesn't need to be the one who's up front, but he's always working for the good of the group and for what's best, not for himself personally, but for the collective.
See, I like that. That's good. I went with Nehemiah, a builder. The wall, like put together the wall, and saw a need and decided to fix it with ancient technology, but technology nevertheless. And so it made sense that he would be thinking about like creative solutions to things with the materials that he had at hand.
Yeah, mine was Luke. Kind of a lot of the reasons that you guys brought up was there either the doctor, not necessarily always in the forefront, but helper with that, but smart trope, of that.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. Like I said, Donatello's a tough one because we don't know his personality. Right. We just know what he's good at.
Yeah. And I guess with John the Baptist, he's kind of anti-technology, so I don't know if that works.
All
right. How about Michelangelo? Who do we have for Mikey?
Is this your Peter?
This was my Peter.
Okay.
Yeah. In my mind, Peter was always more of just like like kind of I see him a lot. I think of Peter a lot as like Nick Miller on New Girl, just kind of a garrulous, like kind of like doofy guy. I think that's who Peter would be today. I think he'd be, yeah. I think he's obviously, and this is frequently shown. This is shown in the comics a lot, especially Mike rising to the challenge when they need somebody to. Like the party thing is sort of a front that he uses a defense mechanism, but
overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, but he has a deep well of like strength and responsibility and courage that is there right underneath the surface, and he knows it. It's just not his default mode until it really has to be, which I think is something that you see in Peter a lot.
That's good. That's good. I like it. Dan, how about you with Mikey?
I don't have one.
All right. Well, you failed. This is an
no points awarded.
Peter is a better thought out one than mine. The first person that came to my mind, and then I stopped thinking about it, was Barnabas, because his name means son of encouragement, and so I just feel like Mikey, he brings the joy, he brings the encouragement to the group. But what I'll do, I'll have the listeners vote on all these, and we'll see which one they like. We can go a little bit faster through quick hitters through the rest of them.
I have some for the side characters here.
Okay, all right.
They're really good. They're going to be worth double points. So
all right, Splinter, go, Dan.
No, I'm going to tell you which one I have.
Oh, okay. Then tell me.
All right, for April.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
The Samaritan woman at the well.
Yeah, that's what I had. Woo.
Okay, so different.
Oh, wow.
We matched.
She's different from the one she's worked with. She's a Samaritan. Obviously Jesus is a Jew versus April's human versus the anthropomorphic turtles. She's a reporter. John 4 tells us many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. And so, Samaritan woman is out there telling the stories. April O'Neil telling the stories.
As I said, I had woman at the well, and I next to that, I just wrote, she is direct. She has like those direct lines of questions to the police chief early in the first movie. And the woman doesn't back down from Jesus. She's got very direct questions. She's inquisitive. And then an early believer as well. Tyler, obviously your answer's wrong, but what did you have?
I did not have a woman at the well. I did not have the woman at the well. We're plowing the same field. Kind of. I said Gabriel, the angel.
Okay.
Messenger, delivering the telling others about what this crazy thing that has happened. Obviously, also very courageous and also very different from the rest of the cast of characters.
Right.
So we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Same page. Yeah. Same reasoning. Dan, you take us to the next side character that you.
I have Shredder.
Okay.
So I have Shredder as Saul. So different iterations have Splinter as the pet rat of the ninja named Hamato Yoshi, who is tied to Shredder either directly or other people that were in the Foot Clan. And so there's this kind of starting out friends, but then a rift that is breaking between kind of Shredder and Splinter here. And then also Shredder is known for what? His armor, right? His armor that the one graphic said he used triangular like cheese graters as his like imagery for Shredder's armor.
Who's this guy? I don't know, but I bet he never has a hard time finding a can opener.
And so then, of course, we know Saul, and we have the story of his armor, putting it on, dressing the bronze helmet on David. And so I have Saul as Shredder.
All right. I put Satan ? But I don't know if that was too on the nose. So I also wrote Nebuchadnezzar.
Evil guy, Satan. Got it.
I also said Nebuchadnezzar. But I didn't really think through that one too much. Tyler, you have anybody for Shredder?
This is going to be controversial, but like I said, cancel me all you want. I don't fear your cancel culture.
He's immune to it.
I'm beyond that.
Oh, if you say Jesus, I don't know if I can post this.
No, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. No. But I said James. The writer of the letter, not because I think they're both bad or anything like that, but I just think that James has this like there's like an attachment to the way things ought to be and the way things should be, and like upholding the older order of things, which I think is a very good thing to have. You need that in your group, and obviously James is a good example of that. But it can obviously also go awry if you're not a healthy person, which I think is what you see with Shredder.
Good. All right, I won't cancel. I can't speak for the mobs, but
okay, yeah. Well, like I said, bring it on.
The millions of listeners out there.
All right, Dan, did you have any other side characters?
I mean, my Splinter, I was just thinking Moses as far as the elder, teacher, leader, seeking to guide people in the ways of the law. He's teaching the turtles the ways of ninjutsu.
Yes, ninjutsu.
And so, Moses teaching the law to the people, having to rebuke them, having to, deal with their failings and things like that. So I had Moses as Splinters.
I had again I had Jesus ? But then if that's too blasphemous, I thought of Elijah, who mentors.
I said Elijah.
Okay,
yeah.
So
I said Elijah.
What was your thought process behind Elijah?
That sounds like what you're saying. A mentor, somebody who raises other people up to follow in their footsteps when they're done.
Yep. And then Dan, did you have anyone for Casey Jones? That's the
Casey
only other
Jones
one I have.
Was like, that's who I wanted to be when I grew up. Casey Jones specifically from the live action.
Yeah.
The Oops
was awesome.
Casey Jones, and just having a bag full of different weapons to dole out. But no, I didn't have any.
A Jose Canseco bat. Tell me you didn't spend money on that. I had for Casey Jones, I had Apollos, because he has like the gumption. He's out there, he's doing the thing, but he's not initially a part of the team. He's kind of by himself, and so he needs some order and some structure. And Apollos gets kind of brought in by Aquila and Priscilla and taught the true gospel, and then he's like allowed to go back out there, and he's a part of the team.
Yeah, I put for the similar reason I put John, the beloved, who was also the son of thunder. He was
right.
You see him being like pretty wild, pretty ambitious those early days, but was able to get a little structure and cool his jets a little bit by the end of his life.
Yeah. All right, very good. I have one more game for us. This is a popular game we play here. Will It Preach? Where I give you a quote from. This will be from it's from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of some variety. This specific version of Will It Preach is called Master Splinter or Pastor Splinter. And if it'll preach, then it's Pastor Splinter. And then you've got to tell me kind of the context in which you would use this quote if you were preaching. And again, you two can co-op it. I'll set this one out and just give you the quotes here. So the first one is, tonight you learn the final and greatest truth of the ninja. The ultimate mastering comes not from the body, but the mind. Tyler, will it preach?
Yeah, I think that would preach. I think that's a good thing to, that's you could take it too far to this sort of like Gnostic idea that,
preach if you're a Gnostic.
Yeah, the body doesn't matter at all. But I think you could also say, too much focus on the outward. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. If we could say that by mind, Master Splinter meant what we would also refer to as a heart, which I think you could maybe squint a little bit and do, then I think that would preach. Yes.
Yeah, and the ultimate mastering, right? There's still some mastering of the body, but the ultimate mastering comes from the mind. Yeah. So the renewing of the mind, as Paul might say. All right, so that'll preach. How about anger clouds the mind? Turn inward. It is an unconquerable enemy. Will it preach?
Yeah, I would say, in your anger, do not sin. That we can use emotions, and we see Jesus having emotions having a righteous anger or having grief, but what do we do with those things? We can allow them to be uncontrolled, and maybe bringing up different, if you're doing a sermon series on emotions, or maybe even a sermon series on anger, bringing up things in the Bible where people let their anger get the best of them, and in their anger they did sin. And so, okay, what do we do with those emotions? Because I think God wants us to get angry about injustice in the world. He wants us to be angry. We see Jesus flipping over the tables because of the injustice of people being taken advantage of when they were trying to worship his Father. And so, okay, what do we do with that? How do we still love with things that aren't of God here on earth? How do we channel our emotions into being godly people, servants, without that falling into sin in that way?
Yeah.
So, Pastor Splinter.
Pastor Splinter. All right. Number 3. There is no monster more dangerous than a lack of compassion. Will it preach?
It's a little hyperbolic, but I don't disagree with the general premise of the. Yeah, I think that's I I don't think you could go too wrong in defaulting towards compassion at
Right.
every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a survey of the Gospels of all the times where it says Jesus was filled with compassion would be good. And even the love, the greatest law, right? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So without compassion, you're not going to be able to obey the greatest law, the greatest command.
There was a little thing. I don't know if you guys saw this, or I'm just like too extremely online, but I remember a little bit of a dust up on Christian Twitter a few months ago about empathy, the idea of empathy, and whether or not empathy is a good thing or a bad thing, and I didn't really engage in it because life is short, and I've got other things going on. But I come down very pro empathy in that quote unquote debate.
Yeah.
So I think that in that sense, maybe some of my brothers and sisters on Christian Twitter could do well to sit at the feet of Pastor Splinter and tame. If insofar as compassion and empathy are the same thing, which I think they're quite similar, it's worth contemplating that teaching.
Yeah, wild times when saying you're pro empathy is a bold stance. But
here, cancel culture. You know where to find me.
But here we find ourselves. All right, last one from Master or Pastor Splinter. The path that leads to what we truly desire is long and difficult, but only by following that path do we achieve our goal. Will it preach?
Can you say that one more time? Can you read that back?
The path that leads to what we truly desire is long and difficult, but only by following that path do we achieve our goal.
I don't know if
truly is doing a lot of work in that sentence for me.
I think the idea of our flesh being fallen and many times our desires is that path that leads to destruction, is the wide gate. If we can kind of finesse it into that, the desires of our hearts as Christians, or the fulfillment of what we're called to do is, having the mind of Christ and having his goal for our life, then that's that worthy pursuit. But I think we fall into that is a kind of a false gospel of just follow your heart and what you want to do and fulfill yourself, is finding that, or finding your own fulfillment, doing what you want to do regardless of what the world says, following after your own identity or your own passions regardless of what anybody else says. That's what you need to follow. That's that long path. I think that's a false gospel.
I think it would. I think it would depend on what we mean by truly. Here, what you truly desire, because there's all sorts of things that I think I desire,
right?
Yeah, there is a way that seems right to a man. But if we can assume that he has set eternity on our hearts, which I think is a safe thing to teach, it depends on how deep we can get into this. Is this what I truly desire? Is this what I think I desire? Is this my sinful nature that is calling me to this thing, or is this who I truly am, who I truly was created to be? It's not always easy to know that,
Yeah.
and I think it takes a lot of maturity and wisdom to get to that point. And I don't know if Master Splinter has fully instructed the boys in the way of separating their sinful nature from their true hearts that they've been created to be. But I think if we put a lot of maybe undue emphasis on truly, then I think it would preach. But I would, like Dan is saying, I would want to qualify it a bit.
Yeah. So Pastor Splinter might be getting a few follow-up emails from
yeah, I think
this
that's
message.
Yeah.
All right. Bonus real quick is from Michelangelo. Forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for a light pizza. Will it preach? No, we don't actually have to.
What is a light pizza?
Did I say light? Late.
Yeah.
Late.
Late,
late
for
pizza.
a late pizza.
Okay.
I botched.
I
botched
mean,
the joke.
no, hang on. No, we don't know what, like, is that delivery guy, or are you shortening? It might not be the delivery guy's fault.
It's true. True.
Right?
He couldn't find the sword. Yeah. No, I think be generous in all things. You know.
Yeah, be generous. Yeah. Come on, Mikey.
All right. Well, I know that this was a tall challenge, Tyler, but I think you rose to the occasion. So thank you.
Oh man, thank you.
What are you up to these days? People want to follow along with what you're doing. Where can they find you at?
Yeah, sure. I'm at Tyler Huckabee, just my full name on Twitter, as long as it lasts, which it may not even be out by the time you guys get this podcast out the door. But that's also me on Blue Sky if you're over there. You can subscribe to my writings at Clusterhuck on Substack. I'm over there doing two newsletters a week. You get one of them for free. You get both of them for a subscription price. And I think that's most of what I'm up to these days.
All right, very good. We'll put those things in the show notes. So
yeah, if you want to find him and tell him why he was wrong, people, that's how you can get in touch.
Go ahead. Like I said, go ahead.
Yeah, if you get to cancel him an expedient rate to canceling if you subscribe to his Substack. So just
cancel me, free me. Yeah. Cancel me, just let me out of the cage.
Or if you want to leave us a 5-star review, and in the review, cancel him as well. We'll read that on a future podcast.
Yes, just
best way to cancel me.
Yeah, leave us 5-star rating review with hashtag cancel Tyler, and we'll know that you listened to this episode. Dan, you got the outro in front of you?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler, for joining us. Thank you for everyone out there listening, following along, joining us for the Gospel According to. Remember to follow us on all social media platforms that exist or might not exist, or follow until they don't exist or new ones pop up. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. You can watch this on YouTube if you want to see my cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt. Follow us at TGAT Podcast. Thank you for sharing the Gospel According to with your family, your friends, with your anthropomorphic, animals that live in the sewer beneath your house. But thank you for following, for sharing that with everyone.
Yeah, and share it with your sons before they go off and become part of the Foot Clan. You don't want that. Yeah. You can send us mailbag questions on any of those social medias or by emailing tgatpod@gmail.com. We'd be happy to answer that question. Do your part. Make sure that you're doing your part and obeying the Great Commission by helping us spread the gospel according to podcast. One great way to do that is leaving a 5-star rating and review. We will happily read that here on the air, even and especially if you end it with hashtag cancel Tyler. And thank you for tuning in to listen to your favorite Hump Day podcast. This was the Gospel According to Teenage
Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell.
Turtle power.